Hello, I am. This is a second attempt at this. I hope people will find this. StreamYard appears to have had some sort of technical issue, and I had to recreate very quickly an entire new broadcast. So this is the link. I'm hoping that people are able to find this because this is not the original link that was intended. I know there's a lot of people who are looking forward to watching us today. So if you see this, please come join us here. David's back. Hi.
Please come join us here.
Yes. We're live again. Yes, good. And now people have started to find this here. Sorry about that, folks. It was apparently it was StreamYard that I got a notice from StreamYard that they were reloading. Anyway, welcome, David.
Thank you very much, Greg. There was no panic there, by the way. Everything was under control.
Well, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a wee bit of panic on my side. You're the 44th person to do this with me, and this is the first time that's ever happened. I've had some other issues before, but
I can have that effect sometimes. You know, I can turn things badly wrong at the drop of a hat. So yeah, all good. We're here now. We're here now, indeed. Yes, I am. I'm very excited to get to talk with you. This has been a long time coming. So for anyone who doesn't know, David Brodie is somewhat in my world synonymous with Bunnahabhain Distillery. I've been lucky enough to do the Warehouse 9 tasting a number of times, all but once with David, and it is phenomenal every time. And we want to talk about that a lot, I think. But I also want to talk to you a little bit about what's been going on with you and with Bunnahabhain. I know I saw you a few months ago, but most people here won't have. So, so welcome. Yeah, thank you very, very much for the invite, Greg. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be on here with you. I've known you a long time. It feels like a long time since we first met in Warehouse 9. We've probably not banged heads as often as we should have over the years, but it was an absolute treat to see you and the group at the distillery again. Yeah, 4 months ago, something like that.
It was in June.
And to pour a few drams for you and talk a bit about them in Warehouse 9 again. For anybody that's on that maybe doesn't know me, you can see the name David Brodie. For my sins, I am an aging tour guide at Bunnahabhain Distillery. I've been there since 2015 and probably best known these days for looking after visitors to the distillery that come and do the warehouse tastings. It's not just me, my colleagues all do these tastings as well, and all do a fantastic job. But as I get older and I work less days a week, I try to make sure that I'm getting in and amongst the casks as often as I can. So yeah, thank you for letting me be here, Greg.
Well, I know you always are quick to point out that you're not the only one, and that there's a number of and to be honest with you, the only time I did the Warehouse 9 tasting that wasn't with you, she was wonderful, although I cannot remember her name. There's something about the Warehouse 9 tasting at Bunnahabhain that's unique, and anyone who goes to Isla will tell you that. And the only way I can describe it is it's almost psychedelic. I was thinking about this yesterday because it's like always kind of like you wander out of this at the end of it, you sort of wander outside and the world is amazing looking and it's so beautiful, and you're in this, I don't know, like you go into this windowless place and then you kind of get recalibrated and then you thrust back into.
Well,
that's you.
Well, my kind of main target, whenever I go to do a warehouse tasting, is I want to emphasize that drinking whiskey should be fun. It should be enjoyment. It should be about the experience. it should not be a test in any way. You shouldn't be going in there worrying about are you going to be, you know, are you going to feel out of place? And I hope nobody ever comes out thinking, oh, that wasn't the tasting for me. We have never had a script for these tastings. When I started there in 2015, I hadn't been in the whisky industry previously. My sort of working career had been, for my sins, I'd been a bank manager. I'd watched the industry change from being, in the late 1970s, what was definitely a service industry. I'd seen it become a retail industry, which I wasn't the least bit comfortable with. So I managed to escape that in 2005. I got involved in the hospitality industry, which then led me on to actually managing the Lochside Hotel here in Bowmore, which is where, for anybody who doesn't know me, I live in Bowmore, the capital city of the island of Islay. But I ended up running the Lochside Hotel with its very, very famous whisky bar, which was put together by a gentleman called Duffy McNeil. And Duffy, to this day, has one of the finest whisky collections in the world. The fact that I had to run that hotel meant I had to really kind of up my game for my whisky knowledge. And hopefully I did that. When the hotel then changed ownership, I was not of an age where I was able to stop working. But also, by the same token, I had no desire to take on any huge responsibility anywhere. And I thought, what can I do that's going to meet those criteria? And the best thought that I could come up with was, well, why not try and get a job as a tour guide, where you're talking to people who want to be with you, you're talking about something that you like and something that they like, and let's kind of take it from there. So joined Bunnahabhain very, very quickly after I got there. And I've got to be brutally honest, Bunnahabhain was not that far into a journey of providing a visitor experience. The previous to maybe, let's say, 2012, any visitor experiences were largely round about the actual fact that the workers were able to take out a bit of time. If somebody had made the effort to come, the workers would take a bit out of their time and take them round about the distillery. And it started to build. We saw the success. And now I'm saying we saw the success. I wasn't there at this time, but so by assumption, we saw the success of other distilleries putting together visitor experiences, and we started to build on it. So we're a couple of years down the line into that when I went there, and in my first year, we started out with the warehouse tastings. Now, I'm going to say that Lagavulin were fairly well established at that point because Ian was already doing his thing. Pinky, as many of the people on here will know, is the king of the warehouse experience. And he is currently in the final throes of his leaving the game. He has officially retired. He has a final swan song tasting for the staff, and that'll be the end of an era. So there was a high bar to go and seek with regards to what we were trying to do. We started pretty slowly. This was back in the days when Ian McMillan was still there and Kirsty was there, Kirsty McCallum was there. And we decided that, well, we're going to set up this tasting. Essentially, 3 casks get rolled in. They set up a duty paid area in Warehouse 9. They rolled 3 casks in and they said, right, do a tasting. And we were really flying by the seat of our pants. We really had no idea. but that was the spur that we needed to start to look at the casks, physically look at the casks and look for clues and look at the product and try and piece together where this final result is coming from. And we had two Oloroso casks, and I can't even remember what the third one was. I think it was a little bourbon barrel, to be honest. 300 118, was that the number? I think that was what we had. But anyway, we went and blindfolded. We started to build the thing up, and as we sit here now and heading into 2024, heading for 9 years of these tastings, we've probably run, I don't know, 50 or 60 casks through the place. We try to pick out little tidbits about the casks themselves. If we can't pick out little tidbits about the actual cask right there, we try and build a bit of background into what the casks are all about, where they've come from, what was in them before. Tell me something about the liquid that was in it before. What makes that liquid a little bit different? What would that bring to the dram? And so it goes on. And, as I say, we get to this point now where right now we're waiting on another 5 casks simply to be rolled in. They're ready to come in. And already yesterday, I was starting to do the homework on the casks themselves in preparation for that. So it gives me a buzz. I really enjoy doing it, and I really love trying to relay the information, the things that I've learned about them, onto the people who are drinking it. Because if you can make a connection, then the dram tastes better.
Well, and I that's great, because I think that really speaks to a skill you have. And I know you'll be humble about this, but the truth is, the overwhelming majority of people who are going to come in there don't know anything about sherry. And, I just think most people don't know much about sherry. And even if they know sherry whiskeys, they don't really know a lot. It's just not a very popular drink at the moment. And your tastings, you're very good at teaching people something they don't know something about in a way that's fun, that enhances the other thing that they're drinking. It's not a sherry tasting, it's a whiskey tasting, and it's sort of, they all kind of work together.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny at the same time. It was suggested to me last week. I had Emma McCary from Kilhoman on last week, and she suggested that you and I should play guitar, because I was talking about how I just bought a guitar. But I won't. I'm not a guitarist. I'm just a guy who owns a guitar.
Well, I've owned a guitar for I'm going to say 35 years, and I'm never going to claim to be a guitarist, but I can knock together 3 chords and sing a song badly. So that's got me through a lot of mischief over the years.
I was in a very, very bad teenage band. And then when I decided to move to California, I sold my guitars, and I took that money and gave them to a friend who's a very good craps player. He went to Atlantic City, quadrupled my money, and I moved to California on my guitar money / gambling winnings. And that friend of mine never lets me forget that that I owe him. He doesn't want money. I don't know what he wants. Fame.
Who said
whiskey?
You'll never make money out of guitar, eh? They were wrong. They were wrong.
Yeah, I moved here on 2 guitars, used guitar sales.
It's good. It's good.
Well, so we should talk about this, because we're both.
We should have a dram.
So I've started with the you and I were drinking before we went live, and I'm drinking the 12-year-old now, but I do have 2 other special drams to get to in a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to talk about your dram, and then we could talk about my special dram.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, first of all, I'd like to talk about, if I can get this near the camera, I'd like to talk about my glass first of all.
Yeah,
because
crystal.
If it picks this up, you'll see that it says the Wet Wee Whistle Whiskey Society. Now, this is a whiskey society that's based in Stourbridge, down in the Midlands, just next to Birmingham, and it's my good friend Andy Purslow who runs the Wet Wee Whistle Whiskey Society. And Greg, you may remember this, because I think you will have had Isla connections when this was happening. But there's a lovely couple who live in Isla called Robert and Lorette Allen. And they had a daughter called Kira. And Kira sadly had a very, very rare brain cancer, which ultimately it was too much. And sadly, Kira was lost to us. But when Kira was fighting one of the biggest fights ever, the island kind of mobilized behind her and the family, because there was the possibility, there was the potential of some kind of one-off, potentially life-saving surgery, which was available in the United States. And it was going to take a lot of money to make this trip possible. And a lot of the distilleries got involved in it, and they actually put together a lot of fundraising events, one of which was an auction prize for 4 people to come to Islay and to stay at the Academy House at Birklady, and to then partake in, I think it was 5 managers' tours and tastings, and properly it was the main men who were hosting and looking after everybody that went on that. And Andy won that auction. So him and 3 friends came and did that tour and that tasting. The tour guide who looked after them was a gentleman called William Wallace. And which is, you can't, if you're a Scots tourist guide, you cannot have a better name than William Wallace. So Willie looked after them and took them all the places through the week, and they had a fantastic, fantastic week. And on the back of that week, Andy and his 3 pals decided that they could not let things lie at that. They had to do more to kind of expand the experience that they'd had, to open that up to other people. And they set up this Whisky Society. And the reason it's called the Wet Wee Whistle Whisky Society is simply because of William Wallace. It was the WW. And when they set up the society, that was back in the days when you had to put the 3 W's in front of your domain name.
Mm-hmm.
So they had the www.www Whisky Society, kind of in honour of how well Willie had facilitated his care of them during this epic week that they had on Islay. And we come, I'm going to say, a decade down the line. And Andy would tell me the exact period of time now, but it's at least 10 years, I think, and it's possibly more. And that Whisky Society is still very much alive and kicking and raising money for charity. I went down about a year ago and I did a tasting at the Whisky Society, and then the following night I went into the Grain and Glass in Birmingham, and which is Amy Seaton's pub, a wonderful whisky bar in Birmingham. If anyone's in the city, go and see Amy and the guys. It's a great place. And as a gift, they gave me this beautiful crystal,
Nice
crystal Glencairn. And I'm thrilled tonight to be drinking a dram out of this, to Andy, but also to Kira's memory as well, because people still think about her. Slange, Greg.
Slange. Do you know do you know if she was at the Children's Hospital Glasgow?
She certainly would have been. The Beatson. Kira suffered hugely. She went through absolute turmoil with a smile on her face. She was some kid, you know. But that's the background to my glass, and I thought this was a nice time to have a dram from it.
Well, one of our producers, our co-producer Linda, who you may have met, but I don't know that she's been to Bunnahabhain. She was on Islay with us, but she was yesterday was her birthday. She is by day a nurse at the Children's Hospital Glasgow, and she specifically works with terminally ill children.
Right.
And I usually have a very hard time talking about what she does because it astounds me, especially when we were making the film, when she would do a shift of her work, and she has such a personality where she's able to put it down and go on about the rest of her life, and it's. But I'd be willing to bet she knows that story from a different side. Because she's amazing, and she always says it's a privilege. It's
Well, that was such a special little girl. But when you then move things on, and you go through that, the end result of that fundraising thing, but then it all spreads out into this incredible whiskey society. Monthly meetings, they raise money all the time, but within that society, friendships form, whiskey friendships form. And as I say, I had the pleasure and the privilege of going down and doing the tasting there, and I made new friends there as well. So yeah.
Well, let's talk about what's in your glass for a second, because I want to preface this by saying David and I did not plan this. This is an amazing whiskey coincidence. This is no planning at all. We discovered this 5 minutes before we started. But you want to tell people what you're drinking?
Well, I'd quite like you to put the background to this, Greg, because you told me that this was this during the first trip when you were kind of doing the preliminaries for the whiskey? No, this was the main trip. No, this was the main. This was the main trip. So this would have been November, and our
crew, most of us are friends. We've worked together a lot. People who watch this know, and we all everywhere we went in Scotland while we were filming, we would stay in a big house where everybody would have a room, but we always needed a house that had 2 extra rooms, one to keep the film gear in and Alphonse because he would always be downloading footage. And then the other one was where the whiskey would be. And it was the communal whiskey table. And we always every day whatever we were that day, we'd bring home whiskey, and that would be the communal whiskey table. And we'd all drink and watch that day's footage. I had one bottle that I never put on the communal table. I kept in my room for a nightcap every night. The bottle is long gone, except for this wee bit. That's all that's left of it. But this is that bottle. That is my nightstand. It's a weird way to show this picture, I realize, but it's a strangely cropped picture. But this is the 2018 Palo Cortado Bunnahabhain, and my bottle was bottle 342. Take it away. Exact same whiskey, same release, but he's got 546. Unbelievable.
And this is a genuine coincidence. And even to the point that when I messaged Greg earlier today just to ask what time I should be hooking on to the old interweb just so we could make sure things were working, he told me what his sort of closing dram's going to be in this. And I actually said to him, well, I'll surprise you with my dram, because I hadn't actually picked what I was going to drink at that point. But I said, I'll surprise you with my dram. And it was a bigger surprise than I think either of us could ever have guessed. So yeah, nice. But Palo Cortado, just to throw a bit of sherry chat into it. Palo Cortado is the rarest of the sherries. It's one of the accidental sherries. It's one of these sherries that actually it starts off as Fino, and it starts to work its way down through the Solera system of casks. Those of you that have been bored by me talking about sherry before will know that when Fino is coming down through the casks, it's already been fortified before it goes in to the Solera system, but it's at a level of 15% alcohol, which allows a layer of yeast to naturally form on the top. That's the floor. Occasionally, the floor will start to degenerate, will start to break down, and will start to let a little bit of air in, and you'll get some oxidation on the sherry. The sherry will then start to pick up some of the characteristics that you associate with the darker end of the sherry spectrum, being Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez, and the sherry will change. Sometimes the sherry will change so much that it will have to be reclassified, because that Fino sherry will actually have become an Amontillado, or more rarely, a Palo Cortado. It will meet the taste profiles, the characteristics that will see it classified as a Palo Cortado. Now, in a year, a typical year where perhaps 6 million bottles of sherry might be produced, less than 100,000 of them would be Palo Cortado. So we are talking the premium sherry, if you like, but we're also talking about casks that just work so well with Bonnehaven Spirit. We had a series of little hogsheads through the warehouse, and they were many people's favourite casks during their time. So it's an absolute treat to be drinking a bit of Palo Cortado again.
Well, let me join you in that because I agree. As I told you before, it's one of my favorite whiskeys I've ever had.
Yeah,
and it's absolutely one of my all-time favorites. I kind of want to climb into the glass.
Yeah.
So.
It's that kind of toffeed honey thing that's just...
Yeah. There's like just a bit of that sultana.
Yeah.
And maybe... Do you have Raisinets there?
No, not that I know of. But
It's again, all...
Sometimes the co-op doesn't even have bread, Greg. You know?
Well, it's a candy here. It's chocolate covered raisins, and it's dark chocolate and raisins.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean now. Yes, I don't remember them being called that here, but I know the sweeties you mean. Chocolate raisins, yeah.
Yeah, and it's specifically dark chocolate that and the raisins together that always reminds me of this.
Yeah. I regularly get chocolatey notes with our whiskies. Sometimes there's a citrus hint. Sometimes for me it's chocolate orange. That's I mean, I hate tasting notes. You've heard me. At the start of my tastings, I say this is not a tasting note tasting. But sometimes I'm forced into a corner, and chocolate orange, and we have a confectionery called Terry's Chocolate Orange, which I can consume by the box load, and I get that as a note sometimes with our whiskies, and I think it's there with this one. I do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're starting. We've had. You've seen I've put up a bunch of comments people have. Rab McAkron is actually I didn't put up Rab's first comment. Said, "There you go, the man, the myth, the legend, top-notch footballer, the whiskey smith."
Oh, Robert, stop your nonsense, man. Wait, believe it or not, and you obviously know Robert, and the fact that he is a good 20 years younger than me, at least, probably more. We actually played football in the same team because we played for the legendary Kilhoman FC, which was actually also known as Port Charlotte. So if you're talking about football, it's the Port Charlotte team. Officially, we were Kilhoman FC. And yes, I played football with Robert. Was he better than me? Was I worse than him? Yes. but the beauty of football in Islay 20 years ago was that somebody like me could play to the age of 41 and not feel too embarrassed about it. So it was nice, and it's starting to pick up again on Islay, the football. My grandson, one of my grandsons, he plays football 3 times a week. So it'd be nice to see it be a big thing in Islay again.
I knew Rab played football. I didn't know you did or had, but
yeah. They didn't have the internet in the days that I played.
It's a good thing. I'm so glad my youth did not have Instagram, because I would have been featured in many fail videos.
Greg, if the record keeping had been as accurate back in those days, or maybe not accurate's not the right word, but as widespread, we would be in a very different place now. I think a lot of us.
Do you know? Americans know who he is. He's English, but no one in Britain knows who he is. Do you know John Oliver? He's a comedian and talk show host here.
Yeah, he's kind of slightly squarer glasses than mine.
Yeah.
Quite politically astute.
Yes. One of his old stand-up specials, he was talking about the British Empire, and he said we benefited from committing most of our atrocities in a day when the only way to capture them was in an oil painting.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, but we have an actual legitimate question from the Whiskey Zone. How easy or difficult is it for Bunnahabhain to get the Palo Cortado casks?
Oh, jinx. So we had that series of, I think, 4 hogsheads came through warehouse number 9. How many bottles was there in this one? This was less than just over 600 bottles. So that's not an awful lot of casks. It's not easy. It's not easy to get Palo Cortado casks. But so it's the Whiskey Zone. That's Rick, isn't it? Rick's the Whiskey Zone, isn't he? Yeah. Again, Rick, it kind of comes down to commitment, because remember, these casks are not the Solera casks. These are casks that you have to go and buy from the tonnelarias, and the tonnelarias will make these casks for you and will then fill them with the liquid that you desire. But it's a huge commitment to order casks, to buy casks, and then to have them conditioned with the premium sherry. Now, you can get kind of run-of-the-mill sherry casks, and that's a terrible kind of level to place them at, but there are some of the bodegas who are producing liquid purely for the purposes of large-scale conditioning of casks for Scotch whisky. You can do that. But if you want absolute premium casks, you have to make that commitment. So it's not that it's difficult. You can do it, but there will be a cost. So if you go to any of these tonnelarias, any of these serious Spanish tonnelarias, and you tell them what you want, be it hogsheads or be it butts or whatever, and you tell them what liquid you want in them, then that deal will come together. But yes, there's a financial commitment to doing it, and obviously the fact that Palo Cortado is one of these accidental sherries, that kind of doubles it up a little bit, because you need there to be enough liquid. If not so much Palo Cortado has been getting produced, then that premium price gets bumped again. And are you going to seriously commit to having casks? If that's the level of investment you have to get, sometimes you will, and sometimes the results are stunning. So yeah, and I hope that makes sense, Rick.
I think that there's a certain number of distilleries in Scotland that are very mentally in the public zeitgeist are connected with sherry casks, and I think Bunnahabhain's certainly one of them. And and I usually think that not only is that on the flavor profile, that's also on the kind of historical relationships. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's obviously you don't become that without having those business connections or having those relationships. Yeah. Here we go. Keith Duncan has a question for you. We know there is a lot of love between the distilleries on Islay. So, question for David: if it's not Buna in your glass, what are you reaching for?
Thank you, Keith. Whatever I've been given. But if it comes down to choice, I'll kind of re-quantify this, because people who do the things that we do, one of the questions you get asked more than any other is, what's your favourite whiskey? Now, I have been asked that so many times, and I have to quantify it and say, even before I worked for Bonnahaven, my favourite whiskey was a Bonnahaven. So my favourite whiskey is Bonnahaven Old Acquaintance. But I can no longer and will never ever be able to afford that whiskey again. Before, that was my favourite. My favourite was actually the other distillery that was formed in 1881, and it was a Bonnahaven. It was a Bruichladdich. So, and it was Bruichladdich pre-closure 20-year-old, which at one time was reasonably available at a reasonable price. Back in the days when that was a retail bottle, the step up between the age statements wasn't huge. You know, you could go from an Ardbeg 10-year-old at 18 or 19 pounds to an Ardbeg 17-year-old at about 22 pounds. So you didn't have these massive jumps, but pre-closure Bruichladdich 20-year-old was my favourite dram for a long time, and I still like the Bruichladdich. I tend not to be such a peathead, but I also hate saying that because it sounds like you're dismissing the peated whiskies, and there are lots of peated whiskies that I absolutely love. But if I'm picking preferences and I'm going for the absolute, then I'm going to be up there. But I'm very eclectic. I think I've got whiskies upstairs from so many countries, and I'm very open-minded about my whiskey. There's no bad whiskies. It's you know. Yeah, sorry about that, Neil. You remember that, I'm sure. I'm sure you remember those days. Nah, Neil's a bit younger than me, but yeah, that's.
Well, when I was an exchange student in Glasgow in the 90s, there was a shop in the Buchanan Street Galleries that sold miniatures, and all the guy, it was like his whole business model was just selling miniatures. And
right,
I think that I don't know why it closed, but had it not, I think it would do very well now because it's such a great way to not spend a ton of money and try so many different. And I used to go in there and there'd be a pound. You know, I'd walk out of there with 15 different whiskeys that I'd never tried before. So it was a huge opportunity to sort of get a good broad sampling.
Yeah, I think the difficulties with miniatures in this day and age, to be honest, Greg, is that it's the cost of production. It's the glass and it's the paper, it's the labeling, it's all the add-ons that kind of make them not so throwaway as they used to be. But miniatures is one of the gentleman who has Sukhinder Singh. That was one of Sukhinder's pets. He had, I'm going to say 8,000 because that's the number that's in my head. But he had one of the finest collections of miniatures anywhere in the world, I think. So there's absolutely there's validity in it.
One of the people on one of our producers, Nate, has a young daughter, and he said his daughter discovered that if you take an empty miniature bottle and put it in a Barbie's hand, it looks like a regular bottle. So he said it was a little awkward. He had to sort of debate whether he was going to give his 9-year-old empty miniature. So
I'll try Barbie that with some of my own Barbie dolls. I'll give that a go.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. So yeah, I never knew what happened to that though. But you know, when I just flew there in June, I was on British Airways, and I'm about to say something nice about British Airways, which I don't want to do because they lost my suitcase. They lost my suitcase, and I spent the first week there with no clothes. But in addition to that, one of the flight attendants was Scottish, and I had asked for a Glenfarclas, and he said he came back and he gave me 3 Glenfarclas. Is Glenfarclas? And he said, "You're the first." He said, "You're the first person that's ever asked for this by name." So he gave me 3. And then when I was done, he asked me if I wanted more. I said, "No, I'm just going to sleep now."
Yeah.
But that was my most recent miniatures experience.
Yeah, well, it's a great whiskey, Glenfarclas. Yeah, you did well. You did well.
Yeah, I like it. I've got got a 25-year-old Glenfarclas here. That's one of the older whiskeys I have. But so there's a couple other things I want to touch on, and I realized time has been racing by, and as it often does. But I knew it would with you. Before I get to this other whiskey, because I realize I'm getting to this third one, but I'm loath to finish the second one because this is one of my favorite whiskeys ever, and this is all that's left in it now. So
yeah,
it's going to be sad.
I'm just topping mine up as we speak, pal. Sorry.
But I want to talk about the Whiskey Attic. I was going to ask you, one of my questions was going to be, when is it coming back? But you already told me that. So if you can share with people and tell us a little bit about how that started.
Absolutely. So I've really only had kind of fleeting connections with the YouTube site and the live tastings, which are the Attic All Islay Whiskey. This particular tasting extravaganza was the brainchild of two of my colleagues. So Colin Stroud, who was in the visitor centre with us and who now also runs Attic cabs, Attic taxis in Islay. But he's back doing a couple of days a week with us in the visitor centre through the winter. So Colin and my previous visitor centre colleague, Rodney, set up the Attic All Islay Whiskey. And I think it was just to kill a bit of time and to have a bit of fun. So they would go out and they would talk about different things. Most of the things they would say would be factually wrong. But also they started to do on the back of that terrible lockdown. But one of the good things that came out of that lockdown was Zoom tastings and the ability for people all over the world to get together, and started to do some live tastings, which I've always been party to. Now, I think it's fair to say that the quality of the production, etc., perhaps wouldn't survive in LA. It is barely amateur, but it's good fun. The live tastings themselves, although the YouTube videos tended to be quite short, 10 to 15 minutes maximum, the live tastings tended to be scheduled for about an hour and a half and run on to about 4, with the condition of the people involved deteriorating as the night went on, and also the professional presentation deteriorating as the night went on. We now have come to the point where Rodney, working in production at Bonnahaven, just doesn't have the time to be part of the whole thing. He was our technical man, bad as he was, but he was the technical man. His sister-in-law, Katie, who also works in the visitor centre with me, has now come on board to look after that side of things. Chances are she'll be worse than Rodney. And I've also kind of come on board on a more permanent basis. So the Attic live tastings will be starting again in the new year. The kind of way that we do it is we get 5 or 6 drams from various distilleries, pretty much Islay, but we harangued Jura on the final live tasting of this year. We gave them a torrid time. But that's kind of the setup, and we're brutally honest and incredibly poor at what we do, but we have fun. Oh boy, do we have fun, until it's time to climb down the ladder out of the attic at the end of the night. That usually involves injury. So, but
well, I put the link on the screen, but then I realized no one's going to be manually typing that in, so I put it in the chat. Because there's the link, but I mean, who's going to type all those letters? So I know. But it is in the chat if anyone wants to. That'll be a live link, so you can click on it in the chat. Yeah. And I really enjoy it because it's, like I said to you earlier, it's sort of chaotic, and I kind of get a kick out of it. Yeah,
it's car crash, Yeah, it's absolute car crash. But we'll love the interaction with the people that come on, and we've got it's crazy. We've got people from all over the world coming on to it, and some of them know their stuff. I don't know what they're doing there, but it's good fun.
Well, I was speaking of videos online. I was, I'm a fan of your dog walking videos on Instagram. And I was watching something the other day. There's a thing we have here called History Hit. I don't know what it would be called there, but it's British. It's Dan Snow, the historian, has like.
Oh yes.
Mm-hmm. So he's got podcasts and documentaries and stuff, and he had a guy talking about D-Day, and this guy was making a documentary about D-Day, and he was walking along the beaches of Normandy, and he had like a big regular proper map, and it was windy as hell, and instead of like cutting, I'm not a movie snob, I'm not, I just want a good story, but instead of cutting to a shot of the map later, this guy's trying to hold the map up, and there's like 20-mile-an-hour winds, and all you can hear is the flapping map, and you can hear him sort of cursing under his breath. And then I was like, oh, that's like David Brodie walking his dogs on Ireland sometimes.
See, I think I've actually got a little bit more clever with these.
No, you have, for sure.
Because generally when I'm walking the dogs, I will have my Strava recording the walk, and Strava very kindly then provides you with a little snapshot map, and I just use that iMovie thing because I'm not clever. So I use iMovie and I can cut the little map in. And anybody that knows the island at all can then work out where I'm walking. To be honest, if they know the island at all, they'll know where I'm walking anyway, because I only go to about 4 places. But the beauty of Islay is it's never the same 2 days in a row. I take that drive to Bonnehaven, and as I say, I'm only working 3 days a week now. But I have driven that road hundreds of times now. And some people get to the visitor centre and they say, oh, that's a terrible road. Oh, how do you manage to... Greg, I have never, ever thought this is a repeat. I'm watching a repeat here. This is because... everything changes, the colours change, the water changes, everything's different. It's always fresh. It's always fresh, and it's always a pleasure. And my dog walks are like that as well. I can sometimes there's similarities. Sometimes I'll talk about the same crap. But it's just for fun. And I've got friends. I've got whiskey friends. I've got other acquaintances who are scattered around this globe, but who love Islay. And just a wee half a minute or a minute and a half or 2 minutes of Islay, I hope, helps them and maybe makes them think about coming and visiting us all again, That's why. And I just enjoy doing it. So yeah, no, I really, every time I see one, I watch it. So if someone there said Chris Brown said you'd stepped up your game, and I agree. I agree for sure. I found iMovie, Chris.
I'm going to open this now because we're running out of time. So yeah, I've been sitting on this for 5 years. This is my first trip to Islay. I bought this bottle. Would have been the day I met you, actually, I think.
Yeah.
And this is from the Festival 2018. This is I saved it for last because it's the Monia.
Yeah.
Oloroso matured. This is one of the festival bottlings that year, and as you can see, it's never been opened.
I really hope the cork doesn't break.
Well, it's funny is I have a really old Bruichladdich, a really rare Bruichladdich, and while we were still shooting the film, I said something to Jim McEwen about it, and he said, I said, I'm saving it for a special day, and he said, and I thought this was great, and then he said, the day you open it, that will make it the special day. He said, don't sit on it forever. It's meant to be drunk. So, yeah. All right. Uh-oh. Oh my gosh.
Get a corkscrew out.
I don't have a corkscrew out with me. I do.
I cannot believe that.
Got this.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I jinxed that there, Greg. I'm feeling quite guilty about it, especially as I'm still drinking my Palo Cortado.
Well, that didn't go well. This isn't going to do it. I'm going to drive it down in, but I'll get it with the corkscrew. Look, I'll be honest with you. Maybe Rab is still watching this. Maybe he's not. I drink a lot of Port Charlotte. I'm very familiar with cork failures.
Yeah, it happens. You know, sometimes it just happens. It's one of these things. Stick another bit of 12 in your glass, pal.
That's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to drink this ammonia later.
Just go for it. Let me tell you a Jim McEwen story.
This will become the cork for that in a bit because this is getting down. So anyway, yes, please do.
Yeah,
please do.
Let me tell you my Jim McEwen story because obviously I've known Jim all the years that I've been on Isla, and he I'm not even going to use the L word here, but everybody on here knows Jim. A few years ago, prior to the pandemic, I had a trip away to the mainland with my wife Heather, and it was actually Heather had a hospital appointment. It was a Thursday, and Thursday is hospital appointment day for Isla. So when you fly off in the morning, pretty much everybody's going that way, and everybody's coming back that way at night. This was a particularly stormy day, and the flight back to Isla, we left Glasgow. We circled 3 times, didn't land, and we flew back to Glasgow. We killed some time in Glasgow. We were put into another plane with a more professional crew who promised that they would shortly have us at home on Isla. We set off. We circled 3 times over Isla, and we flew back to Glasgow to land for the 3rd time in Glasgow that day. We were not getting home that particular night. There were about 20 of us, Heather and myself, various other people, and one of the people was Jim McEwen. When we landed back in Glasgow, it was now about 11 o'clock at night in the winter, and there was nobody in the airport. I mean, nobody except for the lady in the Menzies Aviation at baggage reclaim. So when we walked out, not a soul to be seen. We crashed back through the barrier into baggage reclaim through the door that said, "Don't go through this door," and alarms rang and you know, all sorts of noises. And the woman came out shouting, saying, "You can't be in here, you can't be in here, you've left this area, you've left this area." We said, "Well, get somebody out there because that's an empty airport and we've got nowhere to go." So half an hour later, somebody from Loganair arrived and organised taxis and hotel rooms at the Glen Hill in kind of Paisley Barhead area. The Glen Hill Hotel's very nice. Jim was one of the people on this trip, as I say, and he took to the organising. He sorted everybody out. He made sure everybody was okay. He made sure all the people got into taxis and away to the hotel, and we left the airport in the last taxi. There were 4 of us with the taxi driver. There in the back seat, there was, to my right-hand side was my wife, Heather. I was sitting in the middle, and to my left-hand side was a lady called Ella Edgar. Ella was the administrator at Birklady Distillery for about 100 years. She is the Birklady Lillian. If you know Lillian at Bonnehaven, she's been in the place since, you know, Napoleon. And Ella was the equivalent at Birklady. So there was the 3 of us in the back. Myself, who does a bit of whiskey. My wife, who hears me talking about it all the time. And Ella, who knows it inside out. In the passenger seat in the front is James McEwen, and the taxi driver is driving. Can you believe it? The taxi driver is a whiskey expert. He works out that we are from Isla, and he starts to tell us everything that Jim McEwen's never known about whiskey. Jim just lets it ride. He just lets it ride. Eventually, the guy says, "Aye, and what do you guys do?" And Jim leans round and says, he lied. He says, "Well, that's Heather. She works in the distillery. That's David. He makes whiskey at Bonnehaven Distillery. That's Ella. She worked in Birklady Distillery for, you know, a long number of years." He says, and I've done a bit of work in the whiskey industry as well. And I just so wanted to say to this taxi driver, just Google him, Jim McEwen. Just Google him, you know. But it was great. It just let this boy spout away very, very modest about his own abilities. He's a good friend. So yeah.
When I had a tiny bit of an experience like that when we went to Australia to film Jim at the Australian distillery, and Jim left Australia the day before we did. So Alphonse and I were going out the next day. And we go to the Brisbane airport and we're at the duty free, and there's 2 PC-12s, dusty, bottom of the tail. We pick these up and we take them up. This guy's giving us tastings. We got like 4 hours till our flight. We're tasting other whiskeys and everything. And he says, "You see that whiskey there? The one we're buying already?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "The guy who made that whiskey came through here yesterday." I said, "Oh, really?" He said, "Yeah, he's a nice guy." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "You see his pictures on that bottle there?" Because it was the PC-12 was a bottle. I won't butcher the Gallic, but it was the Dutiful Student, right? It was the handover to Adam Hannett. It was the sort of both of them on the bottle.
Okay, right.
So that the guy right there, he was on the bottle. And then the one young lady was the cashier, said, "Oh yeah, he was here. He was a lovely man. He was so funny and cute." And Fonz and I never said a word. We just was like, you sort of let them go on. They were telling us stories and about this and this distillery and everything. We never said like why we were there, and they never asked. So
this is it. The whiskey world is actually quite a small world, Greg. But maybe it's the whiskey that just draws us together. It's maybe that. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, maybe. I'm really bummed I'm not going to get to drink this now. But I will. I mean, I'm not worried about it. I just wanted to drink it online. This is my last one of these of the year. I'm getting to talk to you.
Well, let's just quickly tell people what you're missing, because that was the 2018 festival bottle. As you said yourself, Monia, peated. I think it just made a 10th birthday. It was 10 years old, just.
Yep.
It's 2007, but it was very early 2018. It was bottled in time for the festival. Finished off in Oloroso sherry cask. So Oloroso, obviously, kind of what we're synonymous with. Decent strength. What was it, 58 or something? What's the strength in that Greg? 59.5. Whoa, banging. So
yeah. Yeah, and you're right. 12/12/07, and then February 26, 18. So
yeah. Just made a 10th birthday. Interesting number of bottles released on it. 1,881 bottles, I think, was the release number, and that obviously has huge significance. 1881, because that was the foundation year for Bunnahabhain, also for Bruichladdich. So a nice little play in numbers there.
Well, speaking of which, though, we have a Rab Bruichladdich has a question for you. What are your thoughts on the older version of the Bunnahabhain 18 to the newer version? I'm a fan of both, but there's a big change.
It depends how far back you want to go with the change, though, Robert, because I actually heard, I was watching one of the YouTube channels the other day, and somebody was waxing lyrical about Bunnahabhain 18, and you know yourself, Robert, if you did a straw poll of every distillery worker in Islay, particularly the production boys, and asked them what their favourite dram was, Bunnahabhain 18 is one that comes up all of the time. This particular YouTuber had said, "Oh, Bunnahabhain 18, it's great, but it tends to be a bit batchy." Now, by that, I think he means batch differences. But that's maybe because it's made in batches. You're always going to have some differences. You can't have identical repetition time and time again. But if we're talking about kind of pre this packaging, Robert, if we're going back to the darker labelling, etc., we did a tasting with the Appreciation Society not so very long ago, a couple of years ago, perhaps now 18 months, where we tasted 12s and 18s through the decades. And some of those older bottlings did incredibly well. But actually, your old pal Robin Morton was on that tasting. And the point that Robin made was that a lot of these older 12 and 18-year-old bottlings, the age statement on them was largely irrelevant because there was so much older stuff had to be used to fill the bottles. So there was a lot of seriously old casks were going into 12s and 18s that were age stated at that time, because you'd almost fallen into those production areas of the kind of 80s, the 1980s heading towards the 1990s, when things got a bit erratic. So stock levels didn't quite, and you don't want to fall into that thing where you're simply banging an age statement onto a bottle and changing it every year. You know, we'll do a 12-year-old, we'll do a 14-year-old, we'll do this, that. You want to have a bit of continuity in your core range bottles. So I think we've kind of got to that stage now where the production levels have come up and our batches, yes, you're still going to get some variation, but they're a lot more steady. I think those ones you're referring to, Robert, you can tell me if I'm getting it wrong here, but that's these older style labelings where they were quite incredible, but it's because a lot of the stuff was seriously old that was in them.
There's a term for that, and I can't remember it. I just heard it yesterday, and now I can't remember it. It's not backdating, but basically dating something younger than it is. You know, I know they say Glendronach did it extensively. Billy Walker,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Well, it's just the fact that, you know, it's like if we're talking to people who really don't know their stuff, or that sounds a terrible way of putting it, but people who are new to drinking whiskey, and we say, so this is a 12-year-old, but that's simply telling you that none of the whiskey in here is any younger than 12 years old. So,
right.
Yeah.
So we have one more question for you. We're already over time here, but we have one more question for you, which is, it's a good final question. A personal question for David. Do you have a retirement date circled on the calendar yet? Or can we expect your wonderful presence in Warehouse 9 for many years to come? I like how people always talk about you and including myself, or you and Warehouse 9, or it's like you're like the Phantom of the Opera. You live in Warehouse 9. And
yeah, well, as I say, I was there at the start, and I've seen it grow, and I've seen it kind of grow wings, develop its own personality, and become something. Those early days, we didn't really have a clue, you know, but we've gone on from there. Rick, I have no plans right now. I'm officially doing 3 days a week. Some days or some months that can be 4 and 5 days a week. This month, I think I'm in 7 days in December. So it suits me fine. I could probably not do it, but I enjoy doing it. And for as long as the distillery are going to put up with me, I'll be happy to keep doing it because it means a lot to me. I meet so many amazing people doing it. I've made so many friends out of this stuff, you know. It's so I'll just keep going. No date. Nah.
I like the idea of you as the Phantom of Warehouse 9. We'll get you a big cape with like a tall sort of collar.
Yeah.
No, but you know, I, back to what I said at the beginning of this, though. It's, you know, you're very good at that experience conveys a lot of information without ever feeling like you're having it crammed down your face. It's not like a teacher that's gonna, you know, this is gonna be on the test. The test is just whiskey, so that helps. but you know, you're very comfortable in that role, I think.
Well, I think what I have, and I said an hour ago, I said no script. With no script, like I've got lots of stuff in here that I can put out, but I like to think that I can judge my audience. I can usually make an assessment of the people that are there, and I can usually pitch things at a level which I think is appropriate. Now, sometimes I will get it wrong, and sometimes I will not be able to pitch it at a high enough level for the people that are there. Sometimes I have true experts in my company, real whiskey boffins, and I'm really not going to be able to do anything for them other than pour them a couple of drams. But that's okay, because these people know that. So so that's kind of the joy of it for me. We'll just keep doing it for as long as we can. Greg, I know you said that we're over time. Can I give you a song to finish?
Absolutely. Are you kidding? Yeah, I've got no. There's no. I don't get.
Is
cut
there no
off.
time limit to this?
No.
Right.
No, not at all.
You might want to switch it off after I do this, but
I think people will be thrilled.
We've got the guitar here. This might not sound very great, but we'll see what happens. I'm sure that
wait,
people kind of know.
Direction.
People kind of know that the Bunnahabhain bottles.
Here we go.
In the old days, they used to include a set of lyrics for a song which is kind of now officially or unofficially perhaps, the national anthem of Islay, and it's much associated with us. In fact, it's to do with the guy on the flag, and that is a genuine Bunnahabhain flag. You can see where the winds have ravaged it. So so the song's Westering Home, and it's about a seafarer coming home to Islay after spending all his life at sea. So we'll see if we can remember the words. And it's westering home with a song in the air, light in the eye, goodbye to care, laughter and love, welcome in there, Islay, my heart, my own. Tell the lands of the Orient, speak of the riches, joys of Cathay. Aye, but it's grand to be waking each day, just to find yourself nearer to Islay. And it's westering home with a song in the air, light in the eye, goodbye to care, laughter and love, welcome in there, Islay, my heart, my own. Where are the folk like the folk of the West, Canty and Cuthie, kindly the best? There I will hie me, there I will rest, at home with my ain folk on Islay. And it's westering home with a song in the air, light in the eye, and it's goodbye to care, laughter and love, a welcome and there, Islay, my heart, my own. Islay, my heart, my own. I love my heart, my own one.
Wow. Wow. That was fantastic. Sometimes when people post things from the group, if they don't give permission for their name to appear, it doesn't appear. So I don't know who said this, but they said, give it loudly, David.
Oh, dear.
Well, that was fantastic. Rick Johnson, you made my day.
Oh, you're welcome, Rick.
And look at this. Yeah, see, man, look at this. You're winning. Yeah, so we'll
Nice,
oh wow, here we go. Look at this, man. Coming in hot now. You see, you got people all worked up. And now all I'm gonna do is go down to the kitchen and find a corkscrew.
I know. I can't believe that I jinxed it like that, Greg. I'm so sorry. Sorry.
Well, Keith Duncan said earlier, it seems like a great reason to have David back. Yeah, well, that was fantastic, David. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Greg.
I will be back on Islay in April. We're doing another tour of Scotland with the film, but the next one is going to be about the Highlands and Islands. We did Isla this year, and now next year will be that. But I'm coming over early to go to Isla.
Okay.
So I'll see you then.
Sync up. Just shout me up, and we'll get together, and
It'll be late April.
Hopefully, you'll be into that bottle by then.
Well, hopefully, I'll even start it by then. But my goal is to start it here in the next 10 minutes. So
that'd be good. That'd be good.
Well, thanks, everyone. Thank you, David. Thanks, everyone, for watching. This has been really fun. There's a lot of benefits to be had doing this where you actually plan 8 or 10 people in advance as opposed to me doing it weekly. So we'll be back in the new year with a lot of new stuff. It'll be fun. And please check out the attic as well when it starts up again. It's a lot of fun, too. And have a good holiday, everyone. And we'll see you in January. Sláinte.
Cheers, guys.